She gave him her love, her trust, and her dreams, but he gave up on her, calling her a burden. What he didn't know was that she was about to become a billionaire after he impatiently divorced her. This is the story of Helen, a woman underestimated, betrayed, and unstoppable. Helen grew up in the bustling city of Lagos, where life was vibrant and full of opportunity. Her parents, Mr. and Mrs. Okonkwo, weren't just parents, they were mentors. They had started small, but through grit and determination, they built a thriving real estate business that turned them into quiet success stories. What stood out most about Helen's parents wasn't their wealth, but their humility. They lived in a modest home, drove an unassuming car, and treated everyone with kindness and respect. They believed true wealth wasn't just about money, it was about character, integrity, and the lives you touched along the way. For Helen, being their only child wasn't lonely, it was inspiring. From an early age, she watched her parents negotiate deals, manage properties, and invest in opportunities others overlooked. She often tagged along to their meetings, taking notes, asking questions, and soaking up their wisdom. By the time she was 16, Helen could spot a good investment opportunity almost as well as her parents could. But the lessons weren't just about business. Her mother would often remind her, "Helen, no matter how much money you have, the only thing that really matters is the kind of person you are when no one's watching." Helen's life took a sudden, devastating turn when she was just 20 years old. It was supposed to be an ordinary day, but a car accident claimed both her parents, leaving her utterly shattered. The days that followed felt like a blur. Friends and relatives came and went, offering condolences, but nothing could fill the void her parents left behind. Helen wasn't just grieving their loss. She was grappling with the sudden weight of being alone in the world. In their will, her parents left her everything they had built, a fortune in real estate, shares, and investments. But there was a condition. The assets would remain in a trust fund until Helen turned 26. They believed she needed time to mature and gain life experience before managing such a responsibility. Helen didn't see the inheritance as a burden. To her, it was her parents' way of ensuring she stayed grounded, just as they had been. But without access to the wealth, she had to figure out how to survive in the present. With no immediate family to lean on, Helen moved into a small apartment and took on part-time jobs to support herself while continuing her education. Despite the challenges, she refused to rely on her family's business managers for help. Her parents had taught her that self-reliance was key, and she was determined to honor their memory by standing on her own 2 feet. Grief was a constant companion, but Helen found comfort in the small routines of life. She began journaling, sketching out business ideas, and dreaming of the day she could use her inheritance to build something meaningful. "When I'm ready," she told herself, "I'll create a legacy that makes them proud." 2 years later, at 22, Helen met Frank at a networking event. He was charming, ambitious, and full of big dreams about making it in the corporate world. They bonded over their shared struggles. Helen, with her quiet determination to build a future, and Frank, with his hunger for financial success and status. Frank admired Helen's intelligence and resilience, but he didn't know about the trust fund. Helen chose not to tell him, believing that their relationship should be based on love and mutual support, not money. To her, Frank's dreams of climbing the corporate ladder were exciting, and she felt their paths could align. Within 2 years, they married, starting a new chapter in Helen's life. But little did Frank know, beneath Helen's modest exterior lay a secret that would one day change everything. At first, Helen and Frank's marriage was everything they had hoped it would be. They spent the early months dreaming about a better future, laughing over late-night talks about the life they wanted to build together. Frank had landed a job in a corporate firm, a position he believed was the first step toward his big dreams. Helen, on the other hand, poured her energy into small entrepreneurial projects, ideas she believed could grow into something significant with time and patience. Frank admired Helen's creativity and determination. He often complimented her on her passion, saying things like, "You're really going to make something amazing one day." What Frank didn't know was that Helen's efforts weren't just about making ends meet. They were about preparing herself for the responsibility of managing her parents' trust fund when she turned 26. She didn't tell Frank about the inheritance, not because she didn't trust him, but because she wanted their marriage to be based on love, not money. The couple decided to delay having children until their finances were more stable. It seemed like a practical decision, one they both agreed on. For a while, it felt like they were on the same team, working together to build the life they dreamed of. But life wasn't as simple as they had hoped. Frank's corporate job paid decently, but not enough to cover all their expenses. Helen's entrepreneurial projects were slow to take off, and as the months went by, the financial strain began to take its toll. Bills piled up, and the excitement of the honeymoon phase faded into the harsh reality of everyday struggles. Frank's admiration for Helen's passion started to wane. He couldn't understand why she refused to get a traditional job, especially when their financial situation was so tight. "Why can't you just find something stable?" he asked during one of their increasingly frequent arguments. "We need real money, not these experiments." Helen tried to explain, but her words often fell flat. "I believe in what I'm doing, Frank. I'm building something for the future," she'd say, her voice steady, but her heart heavy. She couldn't tell him about the trust fund. It felt like admitting defeat or undermining the love they had built. The arguments grew more intense, boiling over into moments of shouting and accusations. One evening, during a particularly heated fight, Frank's frustration spilled into something darker, a moment of physical aggression. It was a line Helen never thought he'd cross, and it left her shaken and questioning everything about their relationship. By the time Helen turned 25, the marriage had become a shadow of what it once was. Frank, tired of what he saw as Helen's unwillingness to contribute, began withdrawing emotionally and financially. He stopped providing for her as he used to, leaving her to scrape by with a little income her projects generated. One evening, after a particularly cruel argument, Frank lashed out with words that cut Helen deeply. "You're nothing but a burden," he said, his tone cold and final. "You've done nothing for this marriage, except hold me back." That night, Frank filed for divorce, leaving Helen devastated. She wasn't just heartbroken by the end of their marriage. She was crushed by the realization that the man she once loved saw so little value in her. Yet, even as tears streamed down her face, a small flame of determination began to flicker in her heart. Helen promised herself that this wouldn't be the end of her story. Frank might have given up on her, but she would never give up on herself. What he didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that she was just months away from inheriting a fortune that would change her life forever. Months after the divorce, Helen's life takes a dramatic turn. On her 26th birthday, she receives a letter from her family lawyer. Her trust fund, set up by her late parents, is finally unlocked. Helen carefully opens the documents, her hands trembling with a mix of nervousness and curiosity. Inside, she discovers the scale of her inheritance, a sprawling portfolio of real estate properties, shares in top companies, and investments that had grown significantly over the years. The numbers are overwhelming. She is now worth millions. For a moment, Helen sits in silence, her mind racing with disbelief and gratitude. Her parents' foresight and wisdom had not only secured her future, but also provided her with the tools to build something extraordinary. Determined to honor her parents' legacy, Helen begins planning her next steps. She knows she can't do it alone. She hires a team of financial advisors and people with proven track records to guide her through the complexities of managing her wealth. She also reaches out to her parents' former business mentors, individuals she remembers from her childhood who had supported her family's success. Their advice becomes a compass, helping her shape her vision for the future. Armed with her inheritance and newfound confidence, Helen embarks on her entrepreneurial journey. She decides to focus on what she knows best, real estate, and establishes a real estate and investment firm. Her vision is clear: to combine her parents' values of honesty and sustainability with modern business strategies. But the road isn't easy. At the start, Helen faces skepticism from seasoned industry insiders who view her as a young woman with no real experience. Some dismiss her as lucky because of her inheritance, while others question her ability to succeed in a competitive market. Helen also battles moments of self-doubt, wondering if she's truly capable of living up to her parents' standards. Despite these challenges, Helen stays focused. She pours herself into learning, attending workshops, seeking mentorship, and studying market trends. Her determination pays off as she starts landing significant deals and building a reputation for integrity and innovation. Helen's resilience and strategic thinking gradually win over even her harshest critics. As Helen's business grows, she begins exploring opportunities to diversify her investments. During a routine business review, she stumbles upon an interesting prospect: a struggling logistics company looking for investors. Curious, she digs deeper and is stunned to discover that the company employs her ex-husband, Frank. The irony is not lost on her. Frank, who once dismissed her as a burden, is now working at a company barely staying afloat. Helen sees this as both a business opportunity and a chance to reclaim her power on her terms. She moves quickly, acquiring the company as part of her expansion strategy. When the acquisition is finalized, Helen schedules a meeting with the company's employees. As she walks into the boardroom, Frank freezes. His face pales when he realizes who the new owner is. The room is thick with tension as Helen calmly introduces herself as the new CEO. Their first private interaction was professional, but charged with an unspoken history. Frank struggles to maintain composure, grappling with the humiliation of working under the woman he once dismissed. Helen, however, keeps her tone neutral and composed, treating him no differently than any other employee. For Helen, this moment is not about revenge. It's about showing herself how far she's come. Frank's regret is evident, but Helen doesn't dwell on it. She's too focused on her goals to waste energy on the past. Frank's life had taken a downward turn. Every day at work, he felt the weight of regret. The woman he had once dismissed as a burden was now the owner of the company he worked for. Each email with her signature, each announcement of her latest success, it all reminded him of how wrong he had been. One afternoon, Frank finally gathered the courage to ask Helen for a meeting. She agreed, curious but calm. Sitting across from her in her elegant office, Frank fidgeted, his confident demeanor replaced with nervousness. "I made a mistake, Helen," he said, his voice heavy with guilt. "I didn't see your potential. I thought you weren't ambitious enough, but I was wrong. I see that now. Can we start over?" Helen listened without interrupting, her expression steady. When he finished, she took a deep breath before responding. "Frank, I appreciate your apology," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "But I've moved on. Back then I needed someone who believed in me, even when I was still figuring things out. You didn't see that, and that's okay. But I've grown. I've built something meaningful, not to prove you wrong, but to honor myself and the values my parents taught me." Her words cut deep, but they weren't said with malice. Helen had no desire for revenge. She simply didn't need Frank anymore. The chapter of her life with him was closed, and she was at peace with that. Helen's life had blossomed in ways she never imagined. Her real estate and investment firm had become a symbol of success built on integrity. Beyond business, Helen made it her mission to empower others. She launched scholarships for young women, helping them pursue education and entrepreneurship. Her foundation supported small businesses, offering mentorship and funding to those with dreams as big as hers once were. One sunny afternoon, Helen visited her parents' grave. She knelt down, laying fresh flowers on the headstone. Tears filled her eyes, not of sadness, but gratitude. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. for teaching me to work hard, to stay humble, and to never give up. I hope I've made you proud." As she stood, a sense of calm washed over her. Her parents' legacy wasn't just in the wealth they left her. It was in the person she had become. For Frank, life had become a series of monotonous days. He remained at Helen's company, stuck in a mid-level position, watching her success unfold from the sidelines. Each meeting where she spoke with confidence, each headline about her achievements, felt like a painful reminder of what he had lost. He often thought about that meeting in her office, the calm way she told him she had moved on. Frank realized that the problem had never been Helen. It had been his inability to see beyond his own ambitions. Frank spent his days haunted by the life he could have shared with her. He was now just an employee in her vast empire, a shadow of his former self, carrying the weight of his choices. As Helen sat in her office, the sun streaming through the tall windows, she reflected on everything that had happened. The struggles, the heartbreak, and the triumphs. Her journey had been filled with lessons, not just for herself, but for anyone willing to look closely. The most important lesson was clear: never underestimate someone's potential. Frank had dismissed her because she didn't fit his definition of success. He couldn't see her dreams for what they were, seeds that needed time to grow. But Helen understood something he didn't. Success isn't always loud or immediate. It's built quietly, one step at a time. Another lesson? Patience and hard work pay off. Her parents had always taught her that shortcuts rarely led to meaningful results. Though it had been painful to lose Frank, Helen realized his impatience was a blessing in disguise. It forced her to rely on herself and focus on what truly mattered. And then there was the matter of love. Helen had learned the hard way that true love isn't about control. It's about support. In a healthy relationship, both partners lift each other up, even when the path forward isn't clear. Frank's failure to do this had been the fatal crack in their marriage. But the biggest lesson was the one Helen had carried with her from the start: focus on your own growth. After the divorce, she could have wasted time trying to prove Frank wrong. Instead, she chose to pour her energy into her dreams. Her success became her own, not a reaction to his doubts. And then there was karma. As Helen glanced at the company reports, her company, where Frank now worked under her leadership, she couldn't help but think about the irony. Life had a way of teaching people lessons they couldn't avoid. For Frank, it came in the form of regret. Thank you so much for watching. We hope you enjoyed Helen's inspiring journey of resilience, self-belief, and success. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire and empower. And hey, if you've got your own story of triumph or lessons learned, drop a comment below. We'd love to hear from you.